Hey, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Or good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is when the part of the world you're in. Wow, I see lots of good friends here today. Lauren and Nature and Sephirin, or Seraphin. I keep saying Sephirin. It's Seraphin. And Jonas, good to see you. Plato, always happy to see you. Walter, oh my goodness. Man, you're like, you've been in my streams this past week. That's awesome. I'm glad you could make it. Walter is a good friend of mine here locally and professional photographer and also a Capture One, what do you call them? Not just an affiliate, but also he does moderator, like for some of the Capture One, Capture One, that photo editing software. And oh, David, how are you? Oh, David, I almost made it yesterday to is it yesterday, Hunley Meadows, or is it next week? Because that's like 15 minutes from my house. But you said 7 a.m. and by the time I saw the message or the posting on Meetup, it was like, already like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to make it by 7 a.m. But if it was yesterday, I'm sorry I missed that. But if it's next week, I'm definitely going. Let me check the calendar. Yeah, I can definitely make that. Oh, Steve, Mike Ham, always good to see you. And Chuck, Roberto, Cam, good morning. Oh, yesterday. Okay, so I'll have to check the photos on the Meetup site because I think you said the topic was reflections, and so close, so close. I could have definitely made that, but maybe we'll do some sunflower though this week because my schedule, other than if a job calls, I should be pretty free this week. Maybe we'll do early morning or late afternoon. I don't know. That sunflower place is about an hour and a half drive for me though, at least. But I can go. Bob Marsh, how are you? Marco, good to see you. So, as always, welcome to my live stream this morning where I do my best to answer your questions on Olympus cameras and gear, photography in general, maybe Olympus workspace. After this stream, usually immediately after this stream, I do a separate one where I edit your photos in workspace. So there's links below to submit your photos to be edited, or you can actually download one of mine. I send one out a couple times a week for you guys to edit my picture, and it's always fun to see what you do with my images, and I always try to pick ones that have some hope of being decent, right? Because we all have those non-keepers, right? But then we have those that are kind of like there's something there, but I can't make it work. But that's always fun, and my Olympus workspace was working yesterday really well, so I did get a chance to edit my picture to compare against what you guys did. Oh, okay. And then also this week I've been doing yeah, pixel peeping edits. I know, but that's what editing is, right? You're pixel peeping pretty much. No inside info on the M10 Mark IV. From what I've heard, and this was from last week, that it's basically going to be the 20 megapixel sensor without phase detect, which I don't know why they would do that, but maybe to save the sales of the M5 Mark III, because really the M5 Mark III in a lot of ways, you take away the weather sealing, mic jack, and flip around screen, that should have been the M10 Mark IV, right? Because they took away tethering, they put a plastic body on it, and that's about it. And then of course the M10 Mark II or M5 Mark III has the weather sealing, flippy screen, mic jack, phase detect. But I feel like the M10 Mark IV should have been that without, they could have made the M10 Mark IV just like the M5 Mark III, but take away weather sealing, flip around screen, mic jack, and you know, call it a day, right? Leave the 5-axis awesome image stabilization, because the image stabilization on the M10s were never as good as the M5s. I mean, I'd even take a lesser image stabilization system, but it probably costs more to redesign. That's, well, anyway, I feel like, you know, that's all they need to do is just take the same camera, change the form factor a little bit, and let people pick what they want rather than having to compromise a feature, right, from one camera to the next. Yeah, it's you know, it's, oh, yeah, it's, you know, and then, because yeah, weather sealing costs money, right? So they need to charge more, and flip around screen and mic jack costs money, not as much as probably the weather sealing, but so they can justify charging a higher price for an EM5 Mark III, but they could do an EM10 Mark IV that's just like the EM5 Mark III, but without those things, and charge a couple $100 less, get people to come in to the Micro Four Thirds system, particularly Olympus. It makes sense to me, but who knows? You know, maybe, you know, what do I know about marketing cameras? All I can tell you is what I would like to see. Let's see. Steve says, is there any way of taking dark frames with an Olympus camera besides turning noise reduction on? Yeah, just put a you know, lens cap on the front and take another picture. That's what astrophotographers used to do, right? Before, you know, black frames were kind of built into the camera. Is they use the black card, or they put a lens cap back on their lens and take another picture, and there you have it. But then you need the software to be able to put those together, right, and subtract the noise. But that being said, Olympus Workspace has that built in. They have a black frame. I don't think they call it black frame, but they have a black frame feature in Olympus Workspace. So that's the way they did it in old school. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Mike says he loved the RP ISO comparison, but shouldn't you compare Micro Four Thirds ISO 200 to full frame ISO 800 due to the quarter? No. And the reason I do that is because realistically, you know, when you need to take a picture, right, you can't just pick whatever settings you want to get the same exposure between different cameras, right? If I set the ISO for 800 on a full frame and ISO 800 on a Micro Four Thirds, the shutter speed and aperture are going to have to match also, right? Because let's say that's the shutter speed and aperture you need to get the proper exposure. So there's, you know, there's no way to really, it just wouldn't be a fair comparison and not a realistic one. You know, do I want to compare ISO to, and really after you leave the base ISO, say I'm on base ISO 100 on a Canon, base 200 on the Olympus, once you go outside of that base ISO, everything is software driven anyway. So I think it's more, it's more, I don't know what's wrong with my brain, but it's more realistic to use the same ISOs from that point forward, right? Like, it wouldn't be fair to compare ISO 200 on the Canon versus ISO 200 on the Olympus so much, but I didn't have a choice because now the Canon is artificially raising the exposure in camera. But the good thing is at ISO 200, there's no noise anywhere anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But when I did my exposure latitude test, I did use the base ISOs and I did adjust the shutter speed and aperture because that's where it matters, right? So if the base ISO on a camera is say 400, for some reason. I'd have to use base ISO 400 on that camera and base ISO 100 on the Canon. But between Olympus and Canon, it's base ISO 100 and 200. And on my Fujifilm, I have another test coming. The base ISO is 160. So at base ISO, doing sort of that exposure latitude type testing, yeah, that's where you use base ISO and they may differ. But after you leave base ISO, it doesn't matter because the exposure has to be the same. And changing the exposure mechanically through the aperture so that they match just doesn't make any sense. And just remember that even though the sensor is a quarter of the size, exposure is based on per square centimeter or per square millimeter. It's not based on the total area of the sensor, it's based per millimeter. So changing the exposure or ISO in any way in a comparison is going to put one camera at an artificial limitation. So that's why I compared everything except the exposure latitude test at the same ISOs across the board best I can. I hope that makes sense. If anybody has any more feedback on that, let me know. Because that's the methodology I used, and that's my rationale. You don't get light leaks. Well, generally, if you're taking a black frame, depending how long it is, right? Steve is asking about light leaks when using a body cap. I guess you could potentially. But generally at night, it's so dark anyway, you don't have to worry about light leaks. But yeah, it wouldn't hurt to wrap the front of the lens with maybe a black cloth over the body cap. You know, so go prepared if you want to do that. So there is potential for light leaks, but it's pretty low unless you're doing 15-minute exposures or something, right, or longer, where in that case, you know, people, they turn off their LCDs, they turn off you know, they keep their cell phones away, any kind of other external light, they try to minimize that. But so yeah, maybe turn off your LCD, like go to the EVF view when you're doing a black frame, so there's less ambient light coming off the camera itself. But yeah, that's what people do, is they use just a black cloth. But most black frames are only, you know, 30 seconds to a minute, and the light leak risk is pretty low because it's so dark anyway. Plato says, would there be a difference in price between a flip up and flip around screen? Cannot imagine why. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think the mechanics of flipping all the way around is a little more difficult because the wires have to be able to twist along this hinge, right? And if they're not using wires, maybe they're just using a contacts, like in a pot or a potentiometer, to detect that rotation. But yeah, I don't think at this point it's anything would be engineering wise a big deal, as both have been around a long time. Is there a way of taking bias frames with an Olympus camera? I don't know. I don't know what a bias frame is. If you could explain that to me, I could maybe work out a way to do it. But honestly, I don't know. I'm not really a night astrophotography kind of guy. That does sound familiar, bias frame. If anybody knows, let me know, and I'll see if I can come up with a workaround. Bob says it's called dark frame in Workspace. It is in the details section. Thank you, Bob. Joe says, will shooting at high ISO affect the number of frames per second on the OMD 1.3 cameras? No, not at all. The processing's so fast, it's not an issue at all. Flip out has to be more expensive. Lauren says, flip out has to be more expensive, and I assume more easy to break, not good. Yeah. Hi, Fancy Bunny. How are you? You know, for general photographer, I prefer the tilt screen, you know, because then I can use an L bracket and I can, you know, because I mean, you could still use an L bracket with a normal flip out screen, but uh, it'd have to be flat against the camera, which is a little awkward sometimes, because you need to see the screen. You know, it just makes it easier to see the screen when you can at least tilt it, and it's easier because you can sort of one hand sometimes the tilt screen uh when you're working. Well, this is the problem I have with the flip around screen. I mean, I think of the two, I have to take the flip around screen because of my video work, but part of the problem is you know, the strap kind of gets in the way sometimes, right? And you have to be careful, things like that, right? It's just kind of clumsy for general photography, in my opinion. I much prefer just a regular tilt if I'm just gonna go out shooting. But my my go-to cameras for regular shooting all have flip screens, and you know, in terms of handling, the EM10 Mark II is actually the best camera uh, for photography and street work, but it's not the best camera for video because you know, I vlog and I take pictures at the same time. Steve says bias is a 0-second exposure that shows the electronic signature noise of the chip itself. Oh, no, I can't think of any way to do that. But I would think at this point in time that the noise floor of the electronics in the camera are so low that it wouldn't be necessary. But just not my area, Steve. I'm sorry. I can't think of a way to do a 0-second exposure. I mean, the closest you could come is do an electronic shutter 1/8,000th of a second black frame. That's, you know, at the ISO that you choose, right? Because man, if you do 1/8,000th of a second with the lens cap on, I can't see why that wouldn't be kind of the same thing. That's interesting. I'll have to I just don't know. I just don't know enough about that type of, you know, because I assume we're talking about astrophotography. I don't know enough about astrophotography to give you a competent answer on that. And Marcia says, "Hello, Rob, and all viewers. A happy woman here because Hurricane Isaias, and that just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Isaias is passing by us. Yes, that's right. It is off the coast and not coming on the land. Thank goodness. But yeah, it's definitely going to get some rain. Rainstorms worry me here, where you know, in my house, because I have so many trees that are like 100 years old, and they're all rickety. You know, they're like a good gust of wind could just rip off those humongous branches onto my house or knock the tree over because they're so tall. Because if you may have seen one of my videos or like the end screen on this stream, I got this humongous oak tree. I mean, that thing must have a diameter of about, you know, maybe 5 feet, like 1.5 meters in diameter, just the trunk, and a circumference of probably, anyway, I don't know my geometry that well, but pretty good size, pretty good circumference as well, and it's tall as all get out. It's at least, you know, 100 feet high, and my neighbor's trees are taller than that. And then when the storm comes in, man, it's like, I just thank God my house is brick. And if a smaller branch falls down, it'll It'll probably only destroy the roof so much and minimal to the foundation of the house. Good morning, Manuel. Music, don't worry about it. It's okay, I was late starting anyway. And then Criminal says, as far as flip screen goes, it's what everybody seems to want, and if it's not there, they complain. Yeah, most of the online YouTubers, they're all vloggers, right? So they want a flip screen, and they complain. Especially Casey over there at Camera Conspiracies, right? But you know, their logic is, why not have a flip screen on every camera? And my logic is, why have it on every camera? Not everybody wants that. It's not as, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's some very narrow situations where a fully articulating screen does make sense in photography. Like when you're doing you know, portraits, you can tilt this down and you can look right at it. That's why Fujifilm has that weirdo tilt angle screen too, right? Because they recognize photographers that this kind of scenario does help. But how much different is it from just that? It's not that much different. You can still kind of see, you know, and all these are OLED displays anyways, so you got good viewing angles and stuff. But people, you know, anyhow, it's my opinion. Mike Ham says, bias frame is an average of multiple dark frames, then averaging them to get a bias of pixel. If a pixel is offset, it will show up in this. Take multiple, then average in Photoshop. Oh, okay. Okay, so if you're just averaging dark frames, then yeah, you would just take them all and blend them in Photoshop. Use a median blend, or there's another one. There's a couple different ways to blend. I think the median was kind of the preferred choice for that kind of thing, but I'm sure there's tutorials on it online, which I'll be watching when I start doing some astro work. If the clouds ever clear up and my schedule clears up at the same time, which is rare. Fancy Bunny says, does the Olympus 4150 f2.8 lens fit on my EMD Mark II because of the same branding? Or does the Micro Four Thirds lens 40-150 have to fit on M43 body, and is the EMD Mark II M4 thirds? I'm not sure what an EM-D is. The OM-D EM1s, you know, all of the OMDs are Micro Four Thirds, so the 40-150 will fit it. They will not fit the original 4/3 cameras, as far as I know, unless there's some adapter for it. But you know, why would you do that? So yeah, if it's an OM-D, it's a Micro Four Thirds system, and all Micro Four Thirds lens mounts will fit it. And Bob Tishmarsh says, I'm sure there are L brackets with cutouts. Yes, for the flip screen to fully open. To an extent. I have one of those on my... I mean, I took it off because it's not perfect. It's not a perfect solution, but what happens is what's the best angle to show you? You tilt it, and then there's an opening on the bracket right here. So what you have to do is kind of open the screen, kind of tilt it already, and then once you have the screen out, you can only tilt it this much. It still doesn't allow you to go completely flat. It allows you to have the screen inside of this open part of the C bracket, and then you can tilt about this much inside, but you can't do this still, at least not with the C L bracket that I have. So it's a partial solution anyway. David Crook says, oh yeah, we're supposed to get rain tonight and tomorrow. Yeah. And then Nature says, a flip out and twist is more than useful when holding camera in low light position. Also a real plus when camera is mounted on a gimbal. Yes. Dang it, I lost my place here. Here we go. Consequently, easy to see the screen. Man, on a gimbal though, wouldn't the screen being flipped out kind of get in the way of one of the gimbal arms? Like you wouldn't be able to do like a full, like some gimbals, right? You can rotate 360, right, in any direction, but if you have a screen sticking out, you're going to be kind of limited to one axis or the other, so that the screen doesn't hit the arm, I would think. And you think it's better when holding in a low, yeah, well, that's, yeah, I can see that, because you know a fully articulating screen can do a full, 90-degree angle, right, totally down, whereas a tilt screen would only do about this much, like 45 degrees. So extremely high and lows, yeah, I can see that. But most people, they'll make do with either one, right? I mean, we have to. We don't have a choice after we buy the camera. Jonas says, my M10 is having trouble with the LCD. It works only in one position now. I ordered a new flex cable from eBay. Wish me luck. Yeah, good luck. Wow, that sucks. The only thing that's really broken on my M10 right now, besides the battery door, is the eye detect thing. And then also it doesn't keep the time and date anymore. Every time I have it off for more than a few minutes, I put, it loses the time and date. So it's a pain when I'm importing pictures from it. And it's a pain every time I turn the camera on, it says set the time and date. And then when I import them, time and date is wrong. So I have to, I should just replace it, but I have all these other cameras. I can't justify it as much as I'll wait. Steve says the advantage of a bias is you could use one dark to calibrate, reduce the noise of exposures regardless of how long they are. That's interesting. That makes sense though, because man, if you had to do a dark frame for every long exposure, it's gonna be a long night. My advice is bring two cameras, but yeah, it's gonna be a long night, man, if you have to do a dark frame every time you do an exposure. So using a bias frame makes sense, but I don't know, is that as good as doing a dark frame every time you take an image, or is a bias sort of a, it'll get you mostly there, but it's not quite as good as doing a dark frame every time? I don't know. I mean, probably splitting hairs, right? And Lauren says, seems that the days of still cameras they believe to be over, since a swing out flippy screen is designed for vloggers and selfie shooters and not stills. That's unfortunately probably true, but that's not going to save the camera industry. Cell phones make fine vlogging cameras, honestly. By far superior, in my opinion, if you're just vlogging. For those vloggers that want to step up their game and image quality and all of that, sure, right? But there's not enough of them to save the industry. That's very, very niche, I would think. I would think cell phones will still be the vlogger's choice, because, like that microphone that I did a review on the other day, just snaps right onto the phone easy, gives you decent sound quality, much better than the cell phone itself. And you don't even need that if it's a cell phone. You just need like a 3-foot long wired microphone. And you can vlog. I'm expecting my OMD M1 Mark II and 12 to 40 on Wednesday. Took a while to decide, but glad I went this way. Yes, you'll be very, very happy. I just love my Olympus cameras. I've been walking around testing, excuse me, I've been testing these doing these high ISO test shots, right? Or ISO performance test shots, not just high ISO. You know, like I got my D750 here because, you know, and this thing, I gotta tell you though, man, this thing, I did some highlight shadow recovery on this, on the shadow side. Oh my God. I could underexpose something like 5 stops and still get almost a clean image. That's, and the Canon, man, if you go 2 stops or even 1 stop and try to recover shadows, it's a problem. And surprisingly, the Fujifilm is doing really well in the exposure latitude test. So I'll work on that video today or tomorrow. I'm doing another simple ISO test performance. So I'm just comparing the ISOs, and then I'll do an exposure latitude test between the cameras. So I'm testing my X-T30, my Canon RP, EM5 Mark III, and Nikon D750, and compare those. I mean, no surprise, the D750 just is kicking butt on the exposure latitude side. So, but you know, we like to see for ourselves, right? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make that video and show you guys. So I think it'll be interesting to see how well the Fujifilm does. The problem I'm having with the Fuji, believe it or not, the Fuji and the Canon don't focus as well as my Olympus. And Nikon, I really can't tell how well it's focusing, because the live view screen, you know, it sucks, right? Using the mirror up live view on the Nikon, the focusing is horrendous. And when I use the viewfinder, EVF, not EVF, the OVF, right? The optical viewfinder on the Nikon, it seems to focus just fine. But definitely the Fuji is struggling with autofocus above all the other cameras. It has like the worst low light autofocusing. May have probably the best image quality, but the worst autofocusing. Which you know, I was having trouble with the AF tracking on it as well. It was just, oh my God, the X-T30 takes beautiful pictures, but it's a horrible camera, really, in other respects. It, you know, I have the, what lens is that? Something f2.8 to f4. I forget what the focal length is on it, because I haven't taken it out since, I don't know if I've taken it out this year. Well, anyway, yeah, it's not a, I don't like it. I don't like it. I think it's fine for just still photography and maybe video. It's okay, but not for vlogging, because there's no image stabilization, and definitely not for sports action. It's the autofocus on it is horrible. And let me catch up here. Vloggers are the loud minority. Yeah. And Randy says he thinks it's pronounced Isaias. Maybe. I don't know. It'll be gone in a few days. It won't matter. And it looks like it'll, you know, hopefully it doesn't do any damage, whatever it is. Let's hope it's a forgettable hurricane on all counts. And Mike DeGilio says, Mike DeGilio says, as far as the screen goes, good for shooting overhead in crowds, or if you shoot near the ground, better to have it and not use it than to need it and not have it. Yeah, so true. And David says, I like my flippy screen on EM1 Mark III to be able to get lower or higher and still see what I'm getting. Yes. Canon says they couldn't do it and make it water resistant. Yeah, I never even looked at the specs in terms of weather sealing on the Canons. Steve says, thanks for your answers. The reason I asked about darks and biases is I took pictures of a Comet Neowise with the M5 Mark III noise reduction turned on, and it did not like, oh, you didn't like waiting for dark frames. Yeah. Like I said, bring two cameras. Get two EM5 Mark IIIs, and then you won't be waiting as long. Oh, it rained all day Friday, David said, and yeah, so man, Huntley Meadows must have been must had a good water level at it, right? Because if your theme was reflections, you had enough water there yesterday, I'm sure. Peter Cardo, how are you? Just popping in for a quick visit. Watching Formula One. Awesome. Thanks for stopping in. Nature's asking, the motor at the back of the gimbal gets in the way of the screen on my older Pilot Fly gimbal. Oh, okay. I thought it would. I have an old gimbal I bought. Used it a few times and then it's just too heavy. The way the camera is set up, it is there if you need it, but not dependent on it. Okay. I think we're talking about the flip screens. The flip screens, yeah, that makes sense. Flip screens on a gimbal, right? You just close it when you're not using it, but then when you can flip it out. EM10 II screen, best for photos, vlogging, just use new phones with a good mic. Yeah. That's what everybody's doing, right? If they want a camera, they'll buy one. If they want to vlog, they'll just use their phone. My guess is that flippy screens will break over time and become the most expensive element in the camera over its lifetime. They can be very useful, of course, no doubt. Time will tell. I mean, any moving part is gonna break down eventually, right? Criminal says dark frames will let you see the problems with your sensor. Canons have a tendency to have lines through them when doing astro work, which can be ruin a nice, yeah. Lines and banding. That's the thing with astro work, because you're constantly post-processing, pushing and pulling the shadows and highlights on astrophotography, and that's when it really reveals a lot of the you know, when you start pushing a sensor to its limits, you start to see its limitations. But in a way that's not good, because it will destroy the photo, versus in a normal photograph, you're not pushing and pulling that hard, so the imperfections don't show. Oh, Randy wants a D752, but you're gonna have, yeah, the DF is a much better camera. Man, I mean, the D750, yeah, nice. It's a good workhorse camera, but for a photographer, like retired or just enjoys photography, I think the DF is a by far superior camera to the D750. The Sipset says, for bias darks, flats, and light frames, see Orion Nebula without star tracker or telescope on YouTube. Shows principle well. Take some aspirin after watching. I think I've seen that video. It's like an hour long or something. It's really long. But that was very interesting. Yeah, that was a good video. I mean, he just makes it so simple. I mean, it's complicated, right? It's a very complicated process, but you know, I think he was doing it without using, yeah, you said it here, without a tracker or telescope. I think it was just using a telephoto lens and then just adjusting the camera. Cliff Dweller says, I was going to get a Sony, but my local camera store suggested the M1 Mark II, and I'm so glad he did. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. See, like if I worked at a camera store, I'd be pushing Olympus all the time. I'll probably get fired too, but But it's, you know, recommending cameras is different. Because you have to take in context what the person. I'm thinking like I'm trying to teach a tutorial or something, but I remember the one advice I gave was, you know, if you know somebody that has the same brand camera and knows how to use it, get the same one because they can teach you, right? So if you have a friend who shoots Canon, I think you should buy a Canon, and then you two can learn from each, or you can learn from that person, right? Because the end goal is to enjoy photography. It's not about the gear. And you're not going to enjoy photography if your friend's shooting Canon and you're shooting an Olympus, and he can't help you, you know, with the settings and things like that. It's hard. Lauren says, is the camera industry moving towards the day of only selling professional grade cameras and the rest of the market giving way to the smartphone? We would be lucky if it does even that, to be honest. I don't know. It is frustrating to see consolidation where businesses only sell to other large businesses or companies, right? Like the IBM PC, you know, they used to sell personal computers, but they don't anymore. They sell to big other huge corporate clients. So they left the consumer market, as did many other companies, and they only sell to other big businesses. And the consumer market, you know, pretty much is the cell phone. Roberto says the Nikons were always more expensive than Canon in the film days. Yeah, I think so, because Canon actually, back in the film days, Canon made a lot of plastic cameras. Those EOSs, right? I don't remember any, I can't think of any full-on plastic cameras like Canon's. But I wasn't big into film photography. I had an Olympus OM2S when I was doing film, which of course is all metal, wonderful camera. I still have it. It's out on my desk. I took a picture of it. Fuji has come out with a new firmware updates lately. Okay, good for them. I guess I can check and see if I have the latest firmware on my Fuji. I did update it this year once already, but I can check again. See if that improves the autofocus, because it was definitely weaker. I had to move the focus point around to find something it could focus on, because I was doing low light testing and it was struggling, and I got a little upset because I had to go out and take a few pictures. After I was done, I had to go out and take pictures again because when I pulled them up, they were out of focus, and I was like, damn you, Fuji. Yeah, I hope Cliff Deller, that, you know, particularly on the service side, the professionals out there, you know, they rely on regular service because they're always breaking their cameras. I think those are the people most concerned. The average consumer, normally you don't push a camera that hard that you would break it. You know, unless you drop them all the time, like I do. I've been so careful not to drop my cousin's Canon here. Yes, I can't. Yes, Criminal's looking forward to seeing the new release lenses from Olympus on its roadmap. I'd like to get the 8-25 at least. So if they release that before, you know, JIP takes over, I'll be a happy camper. And it has nothing to do with JIP. It's just this. I've been waiting so long for that lens. The sooner the better. Because JIP is not destined to really take over till next year. I mean, there's paperwork going to be done next month, I guess, but the full-on takeover is supposed to be next year. I don't want to wait till next year. David says his weather sealing for his Canon was a plastic bag. Funny. Lauren says the Fuji X-T30 has phase detect and contrast detect and should be focusing. Not sure what is happening with your camera. Wonder if the X-T3 is better overall. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You know, every review online says the X-T30, X-T3 have, you know, competent autofocusing system. You know, they never said it was the best, but competent at least, right? Just like Olympus and every other camera, but I feel like it's a little subpar. But again, you have to kind of get a feel for the camera too, right? And before you start really nailing focus and exposure and everything else. So with the Olympus, you know, I'm really good at, like, if it misses focus, I'm very good at correcting and giving the camera what it needs to focus properly. With the Fujifilm, I'm not quite as in tune with that camera in terms of autofocus and exposure. And that's why I see it's so frustrating for, like, consumers that are just buying their first camera. They want it to just work and focus and expose everything properly. But as a enthusiast, right? You understand that you start to get in tune with your camera, and you can get the most out of it after you've, you know, tweaked the settings and handle it and know how to focus and expose for it so that you get the best images possible. And with the Fuji X-T30, I'm still at this consumer first-time camera guy, right? Like, I just got this camera and I'm still, but I shouldn't have to struggle. I shouldn't have to struggle to get focus with that camera. You know, when I took it out for some normal photo walks last year, it was fine in the daytime. But I don't like the joystick. It takes a little bit of finesse to really use that properly. I don't like the Q button. I keep pushing that by accident. And I know you can disable it, but it's pretty handy when I want to use it. And then let's just say the X-T30 was not a good fit for me. You know, I don't think I can really say anything's wrong with the camera, but it just definitely was not a good fit for me. Because the images are beautiful and it has some really nice features. And certainly the image quality, as my testing when I finish this other video, the image quality is excellent. I mean, that lens on it is not very good. It's a little bit soft. God, what lens is it? I know it's a 2.8 to f4. I forget the focal length. Maybe 17 to 50? 18 to 50? I can't remember. There's nothing bad about recommending Olympus gear. No. Except for the questionable future. But that could be said for most, yeah. Peter says, hello again. Roclaw Polska here. Not sure I already let you know, Rob, but I got my Ollie 14 to 42 pancake back from repair. All is good. I also got the broken ribbon cable back. It's started cracking. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hopefully the replacement ribbon cable it's not the exact same part and it'll last longer. Hot Umix Pix. Hot Uma Pix. Is there live ND for video? No, there is not. That is a photo feature only because it's done electronically. Let's see. Minolta used to make the best value film cameras back then. Yeah, that makes sense. I still have a couple of Minoltas. My Maxim 7000, the first AF film camera ever, I think. and I have the SRT 101. And I think I have one other one I kind of inherited. I can't remember what it is, but it was some low-end Minolta camera. But the good thing about, you know, film camera, right? It's all about the film and the lens. It has the body itself doesn't have to be particularly special. Just work. I don't know if Luminar 4. Roberto's asking. He's doing exposure bracketing. Does Luminar 4 blend, or do I need Lightroom? I'm not that familiar with Luminar 4. I know Lightroom does, but I don't know about. I mean, I think Luminar 4 has a complementary software to do HDR stuff. That will definitely do the blending. But it's something separate that you have to buy. I don't know if they've combined that now, but when I use Luminar 3 for a little while, for like 30 days, I also had the HDR software, and that would do it separately. But I don't know if Luminar 4, if they've decided to combine that, or if they still do those separate things separately. Criminal says the 40 to 150 would be something I might consider to add to it, and it just gives myself good range with 2 lenses. Yes, it's an excellent lens. The kit lens or the pro lens are both excellent. I mean, the pro lens by far better, right? But by far more expensive, you know, like 10 times the price, just to give you a couple of stops of light and sharpness. And, you know, well, anyway, you get your money's worth either way, right? You get more than your money's worth with the kit lens. You definitely get your money's worth with the 40 to 150. John Leach, hello. Lauren says, from a technical view, it is Sony which takes the cake, but the ergonomics, the menu system, the field camera seem to be lacking. The ISO abilities, fast focusing are all good. Probably true. I've never handled a Sony. I mean, I have an old Sony NEX, which was like my first digital camera from 2012. First interchangeable lens digital camera, to be more specific. And yeah, I liked it. It was okay. You know, I switched to Nikon after about a year because I ended up liking the Nikons better. I don't know why. I just like the optical viewfinder experience for the photography side more than I did the EVF, and it had a good EVF, you know, even in 2012 it had a very, very good EVF. But I still preferred optical viewfinder. Now it's like I much prefer EVF. Optical viewfinder, I can get by, it doesn't bother me, but yeah, I'd rather have an EVF. YouTube has gone crazy over the Sony latest release. I assume you mean the A7S3. I haven't watched a single video on that, but I see like 1,000 thumbnails for it. I mean, it's just not on my radar. Why? I just don't need a full frame. I'm gonna skip full frame. I think I'll get a medium format, maybe a GFX 50R or something, if I can get a good deal on one. I just don't, you know, because I'm doing all this testing, and yeah, they do a great job. Not the Canon so much, but the Nikon D750, as old as that camera is doing a tremendous job with image quality, especially when we're pulling shadows. But that said, I don't take that camera out at all, because how often do you need to pull 5 freaking stops of light? You know, how bad is your exposure that you have to do that? You know, I don't want to crutch like that. I want to learn to expose things, and if I can't expose for something, then work with what I have and compose the shot so that any exposure problems, you know, you work that to your advantage somehow. Because you know, you don't see photographers like landscape photographers going out midday sun and saying, Yeah, I'm just gonna post-process this so it looks like, you know, golden hour. You know, they're not gonna do that, right? Although they could, but why take an exposure that's not right to begin with, you know, on purpose like that? Uh, so they're gonna go out in golden hour when the lighting is good, and expose for golden hour rather than exposing in the daylight than trying to force golden hour. That's kind of how I view underexposing something by 5 stops. You know, it just, why would you make things so hard? It's not a good example, but you kind of you see where I'm going, right? Like, why light a match on the beach? It's so hard. Lauren says, oh, good morning, Errol. Lauren says, Sony insists on making crap kits for their standard camera kits they sell. You have to get a Sigma Sony body to have some quality. Sony doesn't care. Well, they definitely, I don't know how crap their kit lenses are, to be honest. You know, but I think if it brings the camera down to the right price point, it's a smart move on their part without being too crappy, right? And then if people want to spend $2,000 or $3,000 on the lens, they can. But if people want Sony, they're not going to buy a Sony if they have to spend another $2,000-3,000 on a freaking lens. Which is why the Canon RP still boggles my mind that they would launch that with $2,000-3,000 lenses. I don't know how it's selling now. Maybe it's doing just fine, but because now there's actually some third-party lenses and stuff that makes sense. John Leach says, robtrek, what's your view on Topaz AI software? Not that any Olympus user would need it. I tried it a couple of times because I use Lightroom, and it works well with Lightroom. I did the free trials. I don't know. I think it's fine if you what I don't like about AI software, because I tried their denoise software, is sometimes it makes a mistake, right? So you have to go back and check every picture that you edit using when you let the computer think out what the editing should be, whether it's denoising, sky replacement, whatever it is, right? They have all these different types of AI tools now. You can't just push a button and forget it. You know, you have to double check every single image, and that's the problem I have with using those kinds of software. I just don't feel like it's quite there yet, because the AI software that I used was the denoising thing, and it did a fine job most of the time, but I always had to go back and check, because I remember this one bird picture I was trying to denoise, because, you know, birds, right? You got to be at 1/2000th of a second shutter speed, so my ISO was like 6400, and I used the denoise software, and it got it wrong, you know. So I had to, you know, I tried to tweak the little settings and things on it, and by that time I said, you know, tweaking these settings and running it again, tweaking and running again, I might as well just edit it myself, and I got similar results. So you know, it's worth a try. If it works for you, great, you know, because I got 30-day trials. I don't know what else they offer at this point, but I'm always a little leery when something else is deciding how to edit a picture for me, and then I have to go back and check it. I just feel better I can edit myself. And John Modesto says, I have and love the M5 Mark I. How much better is the Mark III, and how good is the eyeglass viewfinder? The eyeglass viewfinder is fine. I don't wear glasses when you know, because I'm farsighted, so I don't wear glasses with the camera. I just adjust the diopter. And with respect to image quality, ultimately there's not a huge difference. Like, if your EM5 Mark 1 breaks, yeah, get the EM5 Mark 3. But if you just want an improvement in image quality, it's a little better, not huge. And then if there's some specific feature that you want to get on the EM5 Mark 3, like the high-res shot mode, the focus stacking, in-camera focus stacking, not only focus bracketing, but stacking, or a lot of the movie capabilities has various high, much superior video qualities. Those kind of things, if you're looking for those kinds of features, yeah, get the M5 Mark III. But ultimately, if you're just casually shooting for travel and photo walks and things like that, and your EM5 Mark I is working, I don't see a reason to get the EM5 Mark III unless you want those specific features. I mean, the high-res shot mode is nice. It's really nice. And the movie, of course, the movie quality is much, much improved. So that attracted me, along with the lightweight flip-out screen, all of that. But if it wasn't for those things, I don't see any reason to buy it. I will buy the 150 to 400, must take out a loan. You know who's going to buy that too, Ulf? Is probably Randy. Randy will buy it. Randy must have hit the lottery or something, because he's got the dream like kit of Olympus stuff. EM1X, 300 f4. I mean, plus God knows what else in Olympus, and then he's got Nikon DF, and I'm sure lots of nice glass for that. Luke Rod is asking, what kind of display do you recommend for editing? I think at this point, for most computers and laptops, just any display that is 100% sRGB, has a contrast level of 1000 or better, like a native contrast, not like this fake contrast that they quote, and 300 nits or brighter for indoor, like desktop type monitors. 300 nits or brighter, and that's usually how you get the higher contrast, right? Is you have a very bright monitor, then the blacks will be more black, or the whites will be whiter, even though the blacks don't change. And I think IPS panels are kind of the going technology right now. For a little bit of future proofing, you can get the HDR10 monitors, and they sort of fake out HDR look to, and it works well, but it's not true 10-bit HDR colors. They do something with the prisms or something with every pixel to trick the human eye into seeing the different colors. But it's as close as you're going to get without spending, $1,000, $2,000 on a true 10-bit monitor. So I think, I forget what brand it is. It's either, I know BenQ, generally BenQ are very highly regarded, $700, $800 monitors, but very, very highly regarded for photography and video work. There's a creator series of monitors now made by, I think it's Asus, but they are called specifically creator series. And those have all the specs that I just talked about, and they're calibrated out of the factory. So those are the things I would look for. If you're looking just for a generic monitor and you don't want to spend a lot of money, like $200-$300, just look for those particular features. 100% sRGB, 1000 nits of 1000 to 1 contrast, and 300 nits of brightness. So now you're kind of in the Samsung territory, right? The Samsung monitors, the Dell monitors, and then every other brand, Asus and AOC, all those monitors like in the $300 range, you can find those specs. LG makes some excellent monitors in the $300-$400 range that have those specs and more, because I guess another thing is to make sure that you want to make sure it's an HDMI 2.0 And they have a 2.0A and B. If you can get an HDMI 2.0B, that'll future-proof you a little bit as well too. Because that's supposed to get into 8K type video. But, you know, at least the 2.0 HDMI, and you'll be good for years and years. But HDMI 2.0B is kind of the latest spec, which is supposed to future-proof you a little bit. Hope that helps. But yeah, as far as brands go, the BenQs on the lower end, the Samsungs, sort of middle of the road would be the Creator Series, I think by Asus. And the LG panels are very, very good. And go at least 27 inch. I'd say at least 27 inch. If you go to something larger, 32 inch, 35 inch, that size, get a 4K monitor. Because then you'll be able to appreciate the 4K resolution. At 27 inch, I think you can get away with 1080 or 1440p. 1440 resolution is really nice in 27 inch. Anyway, that's a lot of information for just a monitor, right? It's not just about the display. Getting it calibrated on most of the displays will be fine. Yes. You definitely need to calibrate your display. So there's Spider is one, then X-Rite. I use X-Rite myself because they have tools for Lightroom as well. But the X-Rite, that'll run you another couple $100 to get an X-Rite color calibration setup, maybe $300. But the Creator Series monitors are already calibrated out of the factory, so you should be okay. But eventually you'll want to calibrate it yourself. And John Softly, how are you? You know, John, I'm gonna be streaming at a better time for you. I streamed at like 7 a.m. my time, which is like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. your time. The other day, and there's a good group of people there. So apparently I'm missing a whole time zone in my streams, but yeah, hopefully that'll help. Anyway, what were you saying? The new Arca Swiss L bracket for the M5 III has a vertical arm which does not close to the body and looks ugly when mounted. I leave it in the bag and mount it when needed. Yes, I took mine off. I don't know if you have the same one I do. I mean, mine is not just an Arca Swiss, it's a grip, right? Which has the Arca Swiss plate. But yeah, the L bracket, yeah, I just put it on when I need it, which is rare. I might do some landscapes, right? Panoramics. I got this other tool though that I've never showed you guys. This thing. If you know, if you really want to get carried away with your panoramics and landscapes and things, and you get like one of these nodal sliders for your camera, so you get the perfect nodal point, and then you get one of these I forget what it's called exactly, but it rotates the panel head to exact positions, right? So it saves you a lot of time. I kind of bought this so I could do 360 photos, you know, for my pro work. But it's great, you know, it's really made for like panos, right? Doing panoramas very quickly. You just go snap, click, snap, click, snap, click. It's very fast, you know, versus, you know, you're like looking at the little lines on your tripod and you're trying to rotate things, or you're looking through the viewfinder and trying to line things up. Excuse me. This makes it really fast. So, you know, like 20 bucks for this thing and about 50 bucks for one of these. But it's definitely worth I think it's money well spent. If you love to do panoramics and things, this is money well spent. I need to take this out. This is a I don't know. I bought these years ago, so I don't know if they even still make these brands. This is a newer NNR-140, and this is a EM tune, or I don't know. I can't read that. It's too small. But it's that, and then this is the nodal slider. All right, the Fuji 18-55. Thank you, Lauren. Is rated as good quality, but the WR lens's prime might be more to your liking. Fine primes. I see that they're using different countries to build lenses in these cameras. Maybe if I really get out and shoot and wear out that 18-55, I might get a prime. At that point, I can justify buying another lens for that camera. But I don't use the camera enough as it is. And I don't think buying another lens for it would make me use it more, to be honest. So I'm going to have to go the other way around, where I use the camera more, then I can justify the lens. Versus a lot of times, you know, you buy a lens, you go out and shoot more because it's an awesome lens. But I don't think that would be the case with a Fuji. Skylum Aurora is the separate product. Thank you, David. Man, what time is it? 10? I need to catch up here. I'm like 15 minutes behind. I'm new to video and wonder if I film in muted or log 400 and put the LUT on Ollie, is it a waste to get me the same image as I have filmed in natural? No. I've done log 400, OM log 400, and then applied the BT709. It's awesome. Don't apply that to the muted profile. Apply it to the OM log 400, and you can really get a beautiful image that way. But if you want to shoot muted and grade it yourself, not apply a LUT, shooting muted with low contrast and sharpness and then playing with it in post-processing is fine. But if you're going to shoot with the OM log, just convert it to BT709 and then apply a LUT if you want from there. Let's see. Just scooped up use Samyang 12mm f2 for some wide field view. Okay. That's a good deal. That's a good fast lens. I've heard good things about the 12mm f2. Let's see. Medium format means a new PC to handle the files, more storage to buy, slower focusing, and high weight of system. It's a different experience for sure. But it might be worth those drawbacks, right? Because it's medium format. I don't think it's worth the trade-off in size and weight to go full frame at this point. So that's my thinking. And yeah, new PC is on the way. I'm still a bit torn. There still aren't really good laptop choices right now. And you know, a desktop, I can get a desktop that is pretty freaking awesome, but I'm so resistant to desktops but I might have to overcome that, because I'm not going to be able to get really what I want in a laptop. What would you do with these medium format files? If you print smaller than A2 or A1, you wouldn't notice the difference. Yeah, I don't plan on printing anything, but I think shooting with different types of cameras, you get a different experience. Like when I was shooting with my medium format film camera, it's a very different experience than shooting with 35mm film. You know, the look of the image. So that's all. You know, if if it were, it would just excuse me, it would just be a toy camera for me, like a toy purchase, not anything I would do anything serious with. But it's a ways off. I'm gonna wait till October to see if there's any deals, And once the deals come in on new stuff, then the used market gets kind of suppressed a little bit. Then I can buy a used one at a good deal. I've done that before with lenses. Like, you know, Olympus will have one of their lenses go on sale for like $100 off, and then down to the price of what a used one costs. And I'll talk to the camera. So I says, you know, a new one is $100 off. Why don't you give me 100 off the used one? And they do usually. So anyhow, it says here, like a Bronica ETR. Oh, I like the Bronica. Really good value, and I think excellent cameras. But the problem with buying any kind of old cameras at this point that use any kind of electronics is the electronics are, it's just getting to a point where even the electronics are starting to go. They don't last forever. And finding a good condition used Bronica or Hasselblad, not Hasselblad, I'm sorry, a good condition used Bronica is hard, you know, because people use those things to death. They're hard to come by, one in good condition, and then you don't know if the electronics are going to make it. Oh, thank you, Ulf. Thank you so much. Wow, I appreciate that. I dropped my... Lauren, I'm looking at a GFX like the 50R rangefinder. I think brand new they're about 3,000 something, but I've seen them used for less than that. So I don't know. The Marked Wolf got late in the party. So is the $350 EM5 II still beats a full frame? I haven't tested the M5 Mark II, but yeah, it's gonna beat the Canon at base ISO and being able to pull shadows and highlights. But that's a one-trick pony kind of thing, right? I mean, taking pictures is not about pulling highlights and shadows at base ISO. On the whole, I still like the M5 Mark II better as a photography tool to go out and have some fun and take some pictures than I do the Canon RP. But I'm not disappointed by the Canon RP's colors and image quality and the lenses and everything like that. I think as far as the image quality goes, definitely a very, very nice camera in that respect. Oh, Marco says the Topaz denoise is improved up to 99%. Okay. Yeah, it's been about a year since I've tried the free trial, but now I can't load the free trial anymore to try it again. Because I did try to download it about a month or two ago, and it said, you know, my trial is expired. I have to buy it now. And I'm like, well, if you're like 100% better than you were last year, I want to try it. I don't have to buy it. I might not like it even if you're 100% better. You need to get 500% better, then I'll buy it. Because it's like $89 or something, right? Danny Slack says, I'm new to photography. I just want to say I learned more from your videos for beginning. Oh, great. I'm glad I could help. And like I said, I do these live streams so you guys can come in and ask me questions. But we end up just talking about photography and stuff, right? Marco says, Gigapixel AI is another story. Very weird artifacting. Okay. That makes sense. Like I said, I think it still has, you know, but Gigapixel AI, what is that? Is that when they try to upscale the image? I think that's what it is, right? Yeah, how do you upscale, you know, garbage in, garbage out, as the saying goes? David Crook says there's been some good updates to Topaz denoise. I've been getting good results at ISO 6400. I posted a bird in flight. I didn't do anything on, oh, okay. I'll have to consider it if I get into that. I mean, noise doesn't bother me so much. Andy says, hi, came late to the party, so I hope the new firmware update. Would you say the Canon EM1 Mark II is on par in terms of CAF for video compared to the EM5? Yes, definitely. EM5 Mark II, EM1 Mark II, EM5 Mark III, EM1 Mark II, excellent for autofocus. Rob, what do you think of the grip that you bought from Amazon? I love it, Errol. It's awesome. robtrek, it took me years to build my system when I was working. Yeah. Hi, Rob and everyone. Do you know an affordable circular polarized filter that gives good results? Yeah, B&W filters generally are very good. They have the least amount of light loss and very, very good. I've been very happy with mine. I haven't used it recently, but I used it more with my Nikon system, but it was excellent. B&W. I think it's B&W, right? It's been a while since I can't read fine print anymore, so it's not B&H, it's B&W, I believe. Hoya is a good brand too, but get the higher end Hoyas, not the lower end Hoya filters. So B&W or Hoya. The Asus ProArt series are nice ones. Thank you. That's what I was thinking of. Creator series, ProArt series. Yes, very good monitors. LG has decent color and low-end monitors. Yes, yes. At the $300-400 price point, LG is excellent. John Lee says, I bought the denoise specifically for bird photography. Robin, concur with your views. It can be used great, an excellent result on a single image, but processing can be a disaster. Yeah, it's tough sometimes. At least when I was using it, but if it's improved, good. I don't know. In 2008, lost my job, 2 homes, credit rating to 400, got divorced, took 12 years to get the credit rating to 750 and no bills. That was tough. I can relate to you. Exactly. Yeah. It sounds like my story in life. Like my life was a complete train wreck in the or let me say early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. I kind of went through the same thing. My buddy Walter will vouch for me. He knows those years. The Y2K turnover was a rough time for me. Yeah, I lost everything too. You know, I had a bulletproof car. You know, the glass was like this thick. I mean, I was living large back in the day. Not, you know, movie star large, you know, not Kanye West huge, but you know, I was very, very comfortable. And yeah, I lost it all. Total train wreck. And I just learned in life that, you know, the best things in life are free, you know? So I lost a lot of ambition since then, or drive to become super rich and wealthy anymore. Because I was like, you know, all I want is free time. Why work so hard, you know? People that work hard, I don't know. Let's not go there today. Oh, I got 2 minutes to my next stream, so I have to go. I'm gonna have to skip all these questions. I'm so sorry. What's the secret of photos like? I don't know. It's all about your own personal creative style. You don't have to follow anyone else. I like dark punchy photos though. For full frame, which is best for great monochrome photography? I can't say. I think any one of them will be fine. Good black and white photography is in the post-processing. It's not so much in the camera. If you can get a camera converted to black and white only, that would be a lot of fun. And then the Leicas make really good black and white cameras as well. But a lot of people seem to like Fuji black and white film simulations. But I think the Pen F, Olympus Pen F, has great black and white film sims. You just have to kind of do a little research. Okay, I have to go. So I'm gonna go do my live photo edit stream. Thanks everybody for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I had a great time. Share the link to my next stream. Yeah, just go to my channel, youtube.com/robtrek, and then you'll see the link there. But awesome. Thanks for joining me today. It was a lot of fun. We'll see you guys again next week. And for some of you in Australia and Indonesia, that time zone, I'm gonna have one probably on Tuesday or Wednesday.